Think back to the days when you were a kid. The world was such an exciting place, full of endless opportunities. Riding your bike, playing basketball outside with your friends, the simplest things kept you entertained for hours on end. Assuming you weren't married to your video game console, our childhoods were some of the most fondest memories we have, full of boundless energy, creativity and joy. We lived each day to the fullest and dreaded the idea of sleep. We were always ready to go on an adventure. As the years passed, nearing adulthood, many including myself started to feel dull, as if life was stripped of its joy. Enter dopamine. Dopamine is the neurotransmitter that is responsible for controlling the brain's reward and pleasure centers. Dopamine is released whenever we perform activities that further our chance of survival. Prior to the modern age, dopamine reward would be limited to certain events, such as procreation, successfully hunting down a prey, finding a fruit orchard in the wild, etc. In response to these types of events, dopamine would be released as a reward for the immense effort that courting a mate or stalking and hunting down a prey takes. Today you won't have to look far to see dopamine triggers around every corner, accessible to us at the snap of our fingers. HD porn, fast food, video games, social media. These things trigger massive dopamine spikes over long periods of time. This overabundance of dopamine in the synapse leads to feelings of excitement in the short term, but leads to depression and decreased in both motivation and energy in the long run. This is due to the fact that dopamine receptors become desensitized to the excessive concentration of dopamine across the synapse. When the stimulus is removed, dopamine receptors remain desensitized. Therefore, the body needs more and more dopamine just to feel normal. This is the general mechanism of addiction. Addiction to cheap sources of pleasure have repercussions which include and are not limited to obesity, anxiety, erectile dysfunction, lack of motivation, OCD, depression, and lethargy. To add to all that, the instant access to dopamine spikes we have today is actually counterproductive to the biological function of dopamine. As today people would rather watch porn than pursue a potential mate or binge watch Netflix over reading a book. If you're watching this and you suffer from any of the following: depression, fatigue, inability to focus, erectile dysfunction, social anxiety, OCD, lack of motivation, decreased willpower, a general feeling of dullness, there's a good chance that you have become desensitized to the effects of dopamine. While it is possible to pelt your neurons with dopamine on a daily basis and still maintain a productive lifestyle through sheer willpower, it is extremely difficult to maintain over the long run. It only gets worse as you become more and more desensitized as the time goes on, leaving you increasingly less willing to perform the necessary tasks that get you where you want to be in life. You wouldn't give a dog a treat for sitting around the house and then expect him to do tricks for you. Why would he want to put in the work if he constantly gets rewarded for doing nothing? It's time to stop rewarding yourself for doing nothing and break free from the chemical chains that bind you. I'm now going to go over the 5 most toxic neurothrills we indulge in on a daily basis. The first one, porn. When it comes to the most commonly abused source of instant gratification, porn takes the cake. Unlike certain foods or drugs, there simply isn't a limit to how much one can consume per day. It's not uncommon for many to progressively degenerate into more extreme forms of porn to elicit a higher dopamine response, just to get the feeling of pleasure they felt the first time they ever watched it. Porn also has certain physical repercussions, namely its contribution to the porn-induced erectile dysfunction. To add to these psychological consequences of porn use, porn or the act of spending time trying to find the perfect video eats up large portions of time that could be better spent on more beneficial activities. Recommendation: eliminate all forms of porn from your everyday life. There's no benefit to viewing porn, even in moderation. Your biology is wired to crave more extreme forms as time progresses. The second one, social media. Social media is the king of distractions. Americans aged between 18 and 64 who use social media say they spend about 3.2 hours per day doing so. Number 1, this is an enormous chunk of day that could and should be used more productively. The problem with social media is it trains you to need small intermittent dopamine hits multiple times an hour. Today we are constantly checking our phones, waiting for someone to like our Instagram picture or retweet something we posted on Twitter, just to get that little surge of dopamine of someone validating our post. This obviously leads to some issues. Your ability to focus on tasks uninterrupted greatly diminishes due to this constant validation-seeking behavior. Not only is social media a harmful neurothrill that abuses our reward system, it also has a tendency to make you feel inferior. If you decide to keep using social media, it is imperative that you understand what its true purpose is, which is personal marketing. The people you follow will only post the most exciting moments that they experience, making their lives appear more thrilling than they really are. Many of us forget this and get caught up in comparing our own lives to the ones we see on social media. Realize that you're comparing yourself to a story that someone wants you to believe about them. Recommendation: drastically cut down your use of social media. Social media will waste your time, cause you to seek validation from others, worsen your ability to delay gratification, and will make you feel inferior if you don't view it as a tool for personal marketing. Eliminate it and watch your confidence and discipline skyrocket. The only exception for keeping a social media account is to play the game of personal marketing. Build yourself an attractive profile, then leave it up as a tool of demonstrating value. This will be a topic for a future post. Alternative: always be social with strangers in public. See someone wearing a t-shirt of a band that you like, make some small talk with them. Focus on meeting people every day and building your real-life social network. The third one, TV and video games. They are extremely effective at wasting your time. Once I had started watching a TV show, it was extremely hard for me to stop. Plot twists, explosions, all novel tactics to keep you entertained and glued to your seat for hours. Most video games keep you occupied in the same way. What makes video games more insidious than television is the leveling system that many games have. By giving your brain the illusion of working hard towards improving your character to a certain level, it has a tendency of making you come back every day to plug in several hours to further advance your character. Recommendation: always be staying busy. If you're willing to give away your TV, more power to you. For most of us, however, that's a pretty drastic measure. The best way to avoid falling into this trap of loafing on your couch all day is to always keep yourself busy with other tasks. Cultivate productive, everyday habits that leave you too preoccupied to consciously turn on your TV to unwind. Or an alternative, read a book. In the fitness world, they have what's called the apple test. If you are hungry enough to eat an apple, you are indeed hungry and have passed the test. If you're not hungry enough to eat an apple, you have failed the test, meaning you're not physically hungry. You are just having a craving for the taste and comfort of food. Likewise, I came up with something called the book test. If you're looking to unwind, and the idea of reading a few pages of an interesting book doesn't appeal to you, then you know that your mind is seeking a dopamine hit. The fourth one, sugar. Something that not many people realize is that eating sugar causes very large amounts of dopamine to be released. Since there weren't many sources of sugar in the pre-agricultural era, it makes sense that our brains evolved to reward us in the case of finding one, as it would increase our chances of survival by increasing our energy stores. With the advent of refined sugar into our everyday lives, we've seen a growing incidence of obesity and type 2 diabetes. This all stems down to the fact that sugar acts like an addictive substance too, by releasing large amounts of dopamine when ingested, ultimately leading to desensitization through overconsumption. Recommendation: eliminate refined sugar from your diet. The fifth one, excessive theorizing, also known as mental masturbation. Many of us who have a passion for self-improvement struggle with this habit. What we don't realize is that reading post after post, book after book, is a dopamine-seeking behavior, filling your head with theory, new tricks and insights without taking the proper action to implement them is mental masturbation in its purest form. It is definitely a hard pill to swallow, but for most people, constantly reading self-help material is just a sneaky way for your brain to get a dopamine hit, while the host is left with a false feeling of success and accomplishment. Doing this wastes time and gets you nowhere fast. Rather than going out and taking the proper actions to realize his dreams, the mental masturbator sits in isolation, reading about experiences of others taking action. Recommendation: keep a theory to action ratio of 1 to 5. Keep track of all the tangible actions you make on a daily basis that brings you closer to achieving your personal goals from now on. Award yourself 1 theory reading for every 5 actions you take. This will keep you from falling into the trap of masking your fear of taking action with oversaturation of theory reading. If you refrain from the toxic 5, you'll be psychologically and emotionally healthier than the majority of people living in the Western world. It takes a strong mind and a boatload of self-awareness to realize the vicious cycle of dopamine abuse that exists in our modern world. The average man seeks to live in comfort, blindingly pumping his brain with dopamine daily. From the time he wakes up to the time he goes back to bed. He's lonely because he's too sexually depraved from porn abuse to pursue a healthy relationship with a woman. He places his confidence in the hands of others by relying on their validation through social media. The average man eats sugary snacks and sits happily at above 20% body fat, slowly bringing his cells to exhaustion from the constant bombardment of insulin that they receive. He will sit in front of the TV for hours, binge watching Netflix or playing video games to unwind from his hard day at work. He's always looking for shortcuts, unable to muster up a shred of discipline to put in the work to escape the hell that he calls life. He'll never change. He's comfortable. But you can. Thank you for watching, guys, and subscribe to this channel for more videos on how to improve your life. Thank you.